hop onto the frequency of that which you want, and you cannot help yourself but acquire that desire. That is what my friend Albert Einstein said. Nikola Tesla also spoke about something very, very similar. And so I think it pretty much even became a cliche of not only hopping on the frequency of what we want, but being high frequency, being high vibration, the whole high frequency status. I think it even became a cliche. And on top of a cliche, we now have a problem, which is that when you go on social media, you go on Instagram, you go on TikTok, you go on YouTube, hopping onto the frequency of what you want pretty much became more of a statement rather than an action plan. You need a protocol, hop onto the frequency of what you want. Great. How do we do it? And if done incorrectly, what happens? That's where most people fuck up. How do we hop onto the frequency of what we want? Why should we even do that in the first place? And then if done wrong, what are the negative points, right? What are the repercussions? Because believe it or not, it is detrimental for you to try hopping onto the frequency of what you want and doing that incorrectly. The people who goes out there not achieving anything in their lives and saying that they feel like they're going around in circle, they feel like they're beating around the bush, those people are the very, which by the way, that's 99% of our society today, those very people are the people that believes they're onto the frequency of what they want, but they are not. Their frequency actually misguides them. Their frequency actually brings them to the gutter. So getting onto the frequency of what you want, or even getting into the subject, it is an extremely, extremely monumentally important subject. But if you do not deeply look into it, you're going to be getting into issues. You'll be doing yourself a tough one. So there are a couple of steps before we get into genuinely hopping onto the frequency of what we want. Of course, it is not pretty inevitable. Everything that I've achieved in my life, everything that I've been able to accomplish, the millions that I've been able to attract, the hundreds of success stories that we've been able to build, all of those things have been acquired because of one thing. Whenever we do things over here, we do them with a why, we do them with a plan, and most importantly, it is a duplicatable system that we can constantly do that will never fail us. That is why we call this a science. Here's what step number one is. Step number one of course, hopping onto the frequency of that which you want is drastically and dramatically simple, yet 99% of society fails to actually get onto step number one. Step number one is going to be, what is it, my friend, that you simply want? What is it that you want? Believe it or not, 99% of you guys will get fooled by this question. Here's why. When I ask what is it that you want, there's a couple of people over here, right? And you're most likely going to be in one of those schools or classes that I'm about to build. You're either the person that immediately looked at me and said, well, Nicholas, I want money. I want a car. I want this house. You're probably over here. Or you're probably one of the people that are going to say, well, Nicholas, to be quite frank, I have no idea, which is fine. Now, here's the beautiful thing. It's that rather you told me that you want money or you told me that you have no idea, both of you guys are in the wrong. Both of you guys are in the wrong. And this is where, again, 99% of society fails. You see, this society is built with traps all over the fucking place. Saying that you want to be a millionaire just so you understand, or that you want to make money as a whole, it means absolutely nothing. The reason that we say that is because everything around us in this universe has its own frequency. Everything. When I wanted $5 million, I wasn't on the same frequency of when I wanted 50K. The frequency is different. Everything on earth holds its own frequency. Even if we're talking of 1 hertz difference, the frequency is different. So what is it that you want? Because saying that you want to be a millionaire, the problem by saying that, or saying that you want to attract money, for example, the problem with that is saying that you want to be a millionaire essentially means that you want to be worth more than $1 million. Think about this for a second. What on earth does it mean that you want to be worth more than $1 million? You want to be worth 1.1, 1.2, 2 million, 3 million, 3.01? How much? You see, the problem is this. It's that you have an infinite amount of desires. By stating that you want to be a millionaire or that you want to make money, you're stating pretty much an infinite amount of desires. Now, here's the problem. Having a multitude of desires does what? It translates into a multitude of thoughts. You will never have a desire and not have that desire translate into thoughts. Never. If you think enough about being rich, it won't be long until you find yourself thinking about you being in a Ferrari. So all of your desires will translate into thoughts. Those thoughts will immediately translate into your frequency. Thoughts create things. They will happen and they will come. They will manifest into your frequency. And of course, your frequency dictates the quality of the events that are attracted into your life. So here's what we see. Whenever you're holding yourself onto a multitude of frequency by simply stating that you want to be a millionaire or that you want to be rich, what frequency are you holding yourself on when you're on a multitude of frequency? frequency. The reason that I'm saying that you're on a multitude of frequencies is because one day you wake up, you want to make $1 million. The next day you wake up and you're like, fuck it, $1 million is not enough. I want to make 50 million. And then you wake up and you're like, fuck it, this world is all fucked up. You know what? I'm going to make $50,000, go in a forest and live my life with my wife. So every single day you hop on different frequencies. Now, the reason that this is a problem is because, think about this, act as if you and I are in a car, okay? And in that car, there's one radio station going on. When there is one radio station going on, evidently you hear the music. But what about when there are 50 different radio stations coming at you through your ears at the same time? What happens? I'll tell you what happens. You hear nothing at all. You are not capable of identifying the frequency. You're not capable of identifying, hey, what song is going on? You're not able to identify that. Why? Because there are too many frequencies simultaneously being entertained. In a similar way, and the reason that I like to play those similarities is because there is a law of correspondence that is into play. The law of correspondence essentially makes you understand that the same way that you see something happening on the macro scale is going to happen on the micro scale. And so whenever we see you not being able to genuinely listen to 50 different radio stations at the same time because there's 50 different frequencies coming at you, you've got to understand that in a similar manner, when you are holding yourself on a multitude of desires, therefore a multitude of thoughts, therefore a multitude of frequencies, what happens is your realm, your dimension, your world doesn't understand anything at all. Just like you don't understand anything when you're listening to the music because there's 50 different radio stations going at you at the same second, when you are on a multitude of desires, a multitude of thoughts are then manifested, a multitude of frequencies are then manifested. Therefore, what happens? You simply attract nothing. And the people who attract nothing are oftentimes the people that are feeling like they're taking 2 steps forward and then 2 steps backward, 2 steps forward, 2 steps backward, or they're simply beating around the bush, they're going around in circles. So what's the conclusion over here? Rather, when I asked you, what do you want? Rather you answered, I have no idea, or you said, I want to be rich or I want to be a millionaire. No matter what you said, both of you guys are equal because the frequency that you're radiating is off. So how do we fix that? Very simple. Be extremely precise as to what you want. Extremely precise. You want to be a millionaire? How much money do you want to make on a monthly basis? First of all, are we talking 100 grand? Are we talking 250K? Are we talking $1 million a month? How much money do you want to make? Precise. Put a fucking number on it and obsess over this number. This number is pretty much going to be that golden figure. It's that figure that makes you, inside of you, there's something that lights you up when you think about that figure, right? That figure, keep it in your mind because that's what you want. So first of all, here's what we've done. Now, just by simply identifying precisely what you want, you're not one of those peasants that are essentially manifesting nothing 24/7. You're not one of those guys. You're actually being channeled into one direction by specifically knowing what you want. That is step number 1. Now, once that you know what you want, I want you guys to start utilizing something which I call the macro to micro protocol. The macro to micro protocol is what's going to allow you to hop onto the frequency of a man or a woman making $1.5 million a year, for example, $2 million a year, $500,000 a year, $100K a year. No matter what your goal is, the macro to micro protocol will allow you to hop onto the frequency of what you want. The macro protocol essentially states you need to be looking at the bigger goal. So when you look at the big goal as a whole is, I want to make $1.5 million a year, for example. Let's say that this is what you said that you want to have, that you want to acquire, that's your desire. You want to make $1.5 million. That is the macro goal. Now, that macro goal also has a protocol. You've also got to follow protocols from the macros. Here's what those protocols are. You've got to act and feel and be the macro. You've got to feel, act, and be the macro. Do you understand? You have to go out there and live your life not only as if you were worth $1.5 million or you're making $1.5 million a year, not only as if you are this person, you've got to feel like this person, think like this person, you've got to be this person in every single realm of human endeavor. You've got to be this person. That's essentially what the macro perspective says. The macro protocol says, no matter what you want, be that person. No matter what that bigger picture is, no matter what that big frame is, be the person. Now, of course, most of you guys are looking at this and saying, but fuck, how on earth am I going to be, right? And that's honestly where 99% of creators out there, they fuck up because they've never done it themselves. They're just going to tell you, hop onto the frequency of what you want, period. How? Just do as if you are. Act as if you are, and that's it, that's all. It's a bunch of nonsense, okay? You cannot simply wake up one day and act as if you are worth $1.5 million. That is going to be more detrimental than you actually doing anything at all. How do you hop onto the frequency of what you want? How do you follow the macro protocol? How do you feel, act, and talk and walk and be the man or the woman making $1.5 million a year? How do you do it? You now shift towards the micro protocol. The micro protocol is essentially broken down into two things. Number one, how on earth are you going to be getting to $1.5 million on a yearly basis? Through what steps? What are you going to be doing on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, on a daily basis? How are you going to get there? The micro, the details most importantly. How are you going to be getting there? And again, we're asking you to dig into the micro. Dig deep. Break down that big macro goal. Break it down into the micros. How are you going to get there? How much money do you have to make on a monthly basis? How are you going to acquire that money? No matter what your business model is currently right now, how are you going to get to that money? How are you going to acquire that? What are you going to do differently? Always remember, if you keep doing what you've been doing in the past, you're going to keep acquiring the same results. Albert Einstein, once again, I quote, says that is a literal definition of delusion. It's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Therefore, you're at 100K right now, you want to shift to 1.5M, or you're at 0 and you want to shift to 100K. How? Channel down the micro. That's number one. And number two, the micro protocol also talks about shifting your inner habits. What I mean by that is you've got to sit down one day and genuinely ask yourself, if I were to turn into this man making $1.5 million on a yearly basis, who would I be? You've got to be able to break down and put on the table at least 3 different points, 3 different things you know for a fact you would be doing as this person making $1.5 million on a yearly basis, such as, for example, I believe that if I were to become this man making $1.5 million on a yearly basis, I believe that I would wake up at 6 a.m. Great. That's a habit that you can write down into the micro. Oh, I believe that my diet would completely shift. Awesome. How? Are you going to shift to a whole food diet, or are you going to shift onto a carnivore diet, a high protein diet? What are you going to do? I'd be more natural. I'd be more whole food. Great. Write it down. What else? Oh, well, I believe that I would be dressing differently. Oh, really? Yeah, I believe that I'd be dressing differently. Amazing. How would you be dressing? What would you be wearing? What is it that you'd be wearing? Do you have a picture in your mind? If so, bring up that picture. Show me. How would you dress? And it's those 3 protocols that I just broke down over here. It's those 3 little points that I would think that as a $1.5 million man, I'd wake up at 6 a.m. and I think that I would have a carnivore diet and I think that I would dress up that way. Those very points, if you start to implement them into your life, there is something that's going to start to happen. Is that as you start to, number 1, wake up early. Number 2, you shift your diet. Number 3, you dress differently. Whenever you look at yourself in the mirror, here's what you're going to find. You've shifted in being. You are different. And as you shift in being, you shift in feelings. As you shift in feelings, you shift in frequency, and therefore your world around you, from the moment that you shift in frequency, your world around you will quite literally melt down to the floor and rebuild itself up from the ground based off of the tools that you gave to it. The tools, what I mean by the tools is the macro protocol, the micro protocol. You see? So let's recap over here. First of all, you've got the macro protocol, which states that you've got to point out exactly what you want. Exactly. And understand that the macro goal is to become this person day in and day out. Keep that number in mind. How do we do that? Through the derivative, the micro protocol. The micro protocol is split into 2 different branches. One branch essentially states that you've got to break down exactly how you're going to acquire that money. Otherwise, if you never break down a plan and you just believe that you're just going to wake up and dress correctly without doing anything in your life, immediately what you're going to do is you're lying to yourself. What happens when you lie to yourself? Your subconscious mind now genuinely sees you as a loser. What happens when your subconscious mind sees you as as a loser, your frequency is down to the floor, and now you're a peasant. So in order to make sure that you're not part of those fuckers, what you're gonna do, it's you break down the plan into a monthly goal, a weekly goal, a daily goal, and how are you gonna get there? It is fucking important that you know how you're gonna get there. That is branch number 1. Branch number 2 speaks about your daily habits and your inner habits. What I mean by that is think about 3 different things, 3 different points, 3 different criterias that you know for a fact you would do and utilize into your day-to-day if you were to become this man or this woman making $1.5 million a year. If you think you'd be waking up earlier, write it down. You'd be dressing differently, write it down. But most importantly, how would you dress, right? What would you be wearing? More shirts, more t-shirts, maybe you'd be naked. I don't know. How would you be dressed? And another habit can be your diet. For example, the way that you train, the way that you work out, the hours that you put into your work on a daily basis. But make sure that those 3 little points and habits, they are correlated to, of course, the macro goal, which is who you want to become. And so here's what we have on the table today. As you start to slowly wake up earlier, you dress differently, you eat differently, you, like I said, start to feel differently. Therefore, your being shifts. As your being shifts, there's something that happens. You start to see yourself in your actual life becoming this man or woman more and more and more and more. Why? Because you've got a plan. Because you've broken down into a monthly plan, a weekly plan, a daily plan. You not only feel the way that this man making $1.5 million a year would feel, but you actually see yourself becoming this man, dressing like this man, waking up like this man, talking like this man, walking like this man or this woman, but you just see it happening. And here's where the beauty happens. Once that you've got that entire circle happening and you're dressing the way that he would dress, you're walking the way that he would walk, you're working the way that he would work, and you've got a precise number on that figure, you know how much money you want to make, and you've just got that circle down to the T, here's what happens. You come to the moment of realization. That moment of realization is by far the greatest moment of your life. That's when you literally realize that you're actually becoming who you said you'd want to become. You actually start seeing it in matter. It is not just a thought. It is not just a frequency. It's not just something that happens from a 4th dimensional world. You actually start to look at life and you're like, fuck, I'm actually becoming this man. I'm sincerely becoming this man. Once you have that realization, just know you've officially shifted onto the frequency of the man or the woman that you want to become. That is exactly how it happens. And with that being said, like always, I'll see you guys at the top.